Every year for the past 19 years, our commencement speaker for this program has been himself or herself a graduate of the School of Management. This year, for the 20th time, that tradition continues. And coincidentally, for our 20th alumni speaker, Bahaa Hariri, this weekend marks the 20th anniversary of his graduation from Boston University. That graduation was an important milestone in the life of our School of Management because it was on that occasion that his family committed the generous gift that named our School of Management building and brought its construction closer to reality. Bahaa Hariri is the consummate global business executive. He is founder and chairman of Overseas Global Express Services, a worldwide freight forwarding company operating all over the world. He also chairs Faras, an investment company, and Matrix Investment Corporation. Bahaa serves as chairman of Horizon, a real estate and development company helping to develop Lebanon, his home country. And he also chairs the El Abadi project in Jordan, a joint venture with a state-owned corporation, which is rebuilding the city center of Amman, the capital city. After Bahaa graduated from our school in 1990, he moved to Saudi Arabia to work in his family's construction and development company, Saudi Oj Limited. He became familiar with all aspects of that company's operations and then set up their audit department. I am especially honored and grateful that Bahaa would accept my invitation to travel from Switzerland to Boston to deliver this year's commencement address. Please welcome one of the most prominent names in the 97 years of our school's history, Mr. Bahaa Hariri.
Thank you, Dean Luteif. Good afternoon, everyone. Trustees, faculty, friends, and most especially members of the graduating class and their families. I'm deeply privileged to be here today. Thank you. The Boston University School of Management, under the unwavering guidance of Dean Luteif, over the last 20 years, has become one of the most highly regarded institutions for its academic excellence and distinction. And with you all here now, it continues to be so. I spent some of my best years here, but today is not about me. It is about you. Today is an auspicious day for all of you, but beware not to underestimate the environments you seek to conquer. You are graduating into a paradoxical business climate where big financial institutions like Merrill Lynch and Lehman Brothers have fallen, and yet financial markets are recovering and beginning to stand on their feet again. We have all been witness to these tides of changes. Indeed, many of you may have been affected directly. I am sure, too, that you deliberated heavily on the financial crisis pre and post in your program. Global business is in the throes of major change, and as we eagerly await the recovery and the necessary redefinition of business, after such a near financial crisis, catastrophic financial crisis that was put in motion as far as the 90s. Sensing the impending crisis around December 2007, when the crude oil price was close to $100 a barrel, I remember considering consumer consumption and how, with rising oil and commodity prices, purchasing power was starting to be affected negatively. And then it clicked in my mind, and I asked myself the simple question of what is the great engine of growth for any economy, but more specifically, Western economies. Is it the Constitution, the military, Supreme Court, currency, dollar, euro, yen, or the consumer? The answer was simple: the consumer. Here was an erosion of consumer purchasing power. We seemed to be heading towards a crisis of significant impact, and the signs were becoming more clearer. The real problem was the absolute lack of regulation in the major economies of the world. We forgot about the basics. When the recent crisis hit, it brought with it a much-needed wake-up call for an essentially different and better, more balanced kind of business to meet today's economic challenges. Investment banks had become as important as commercial banks in providing credit to the US economy, but were not subject to the same regulations. Easy credit conditions made it easy for consumers to obtain various types of loans and allow financial products like the US mortgage-backed securities to become more attractive to domestic and international investors, causing the housing and credit bubble. However, what started off as a subprime mortgage dilemma in the US opened Pandora's box and triggered a global crisis that spread across money markets and resulted in a global economic meltdown. Fortunately, rapid reaction instigated a major restructuring of the global banking sector. And now, in 2010, the world financial markets are seemingly clawing their way back. And this is in large part due to the central banks and government agencies' heavy intervention. Based on lessons learned, governments are introducing more regulations. For example, the regulatory oversight for managing risk to safeguard against another global crisis. You also notice banks today like Morgan Stanley changing and rapidly readapting to the old banking methods, opting to become commercial banks and thereby being subjected to more stringent regulation. As you enter the market, you will witness a major deleveraging process is being undertaken. But be it here in the US, Europe, or Asia, to bring a more balanced approach between the public and private sectors and avoid such disasters in the future. This is very important, as too much regulation would result in restricting economic growth, and too little regulation, well, we've seen the results. In the present day, the current global financial crisis presents both significant challenges and opportunity for businesses worldwide. The global economy seems to have turned a new corner in 2010. Albeit still somewhat battered and bruised, world efforts to aid the implementation of change seem to finally be coming to fruition. Take the United States' new banking regulation reform bill. The new proposed reform represents the biggest shakeup of the US system of financial regulation since the 1930s. The bill, once signed, will bring tougher capital requirements for big banks, regulation of financial markets, which will curb risk-taking and better consumer and investor protection. All of these efforts are to prevent future financial crises and to build a new basis for sustained economic growth. Today, the world is looking at the United States for guidance and leadership. Why? Because simply put, to the rest of the world, the United States is the beacon of democracy and free enterprise. Its status as a superpower makes it an almost irrevocable necessity to become the leader. Cross the Atlantic Ocean and take a glimpse of Europe's state of affairs. The recent global financial crisis also took a toll there, and in turn exposed a number of weaknesses in Europe's institutional framework. Case in point, Greece, now in a financial crisis with a public debt of 124% of GDP, and an unprecedented EU IMF rescue package worth $146 billion. In the same breath, there is a serious worry that this situation could escalate and spread across the EU, presenting a grave threat to the Eurozone. Consequently, a Eurozone rescue package is now in place, worth a total of $1 trillion, ready for when needed, but with strict requisites, like the ones enforced in Greece, to implement the required reform and strict fiscal austerity measures to tackle the debt situation. But more importantly, the situation unconcealed the fact that more than ever before, an opportunity to strengthen integration or cooperation, both political and fiscal, across the continent is in a desperate need to be grabbed. Even though, over the last few decades, the continent seems to be gradually moving into a more unified form of coexistence, it still lacks the necessary drive and commitment. The recent crisis clearly revealed the importance for the EU to embrace the Lisbon strategy, and to take the next steps on strengthening economic governance in the EU seriously. I believe we may start seeing the effect of this over the next 15 years when the helm of leadership is taken by a newer generation, one that will delete the residual mistrust the previous one held onto, leading Europe to a more integrated continent and becoming a more European generation throughout a borderless union. These are not isolated economies. These are interconnected and interrelated economies that today require solid, harmonized, sustainable growth, so that consequently we can achieve a healthy global economy. Let me take you to another region I am familiar with. Before the global financial crisis, the Middle East benefited from high oil prices, but the Middle East has also now suffered as the domino effect of the financial crisis spread, with a sharp decline in badly needed foreign investment, and regional currency pegged to the fluctuating dollar, all wavering high on the ends of the dragon's tail, may have taken the fall. To avert a severe negative impact, governments in the region started taking action. For instance, the GCC governments took to the crisis by injecting huge capital into the system, thus ensuring enough provision for losses incurred. The region is well on the road to a slow recovery, although there are still some hurdles to be faced. After all, a crisis that took years in the making cannot be fixed with a Band-Aid solution to suffice. But if I were to look intently into the future, I would say the Middle East as a whole is also like the other regions on a potentially encouraging route to economic prosperity, particularly with the available oil proceeds and with hindsight assistance, the adoption of a more conservative growth measures. What's more, at present, Iraq hints on becoming more of a reformist country under the new regime. This is good news. Even now, with political turmoil in the country, the promise of growth is evident. Should this promise materialize, Iraq's progress will positively affect the Levant area in the process. When this happens, the business and investment opportunities will be abundant. At the moment, though, the Middle East is going through challenging times, be it economically and/or politically. Nevertheless, I would have to say the silver lining in the sky is there, and I am cautiously optimistic of the future. So at the end of the day, you really are stepping out into an intricate business climate that is on a slow path to recovery, where the only way is forward, but even that is not as easy as it sounds. The MBA you hold today proves that you are striving to better yourselves, that you value education, and are aware of the need to be equipped with all the necessary knowledge to enable you to embark on your new careers. Today, you proudly boast a wealth of knowledge. You are armed to enter your new phase in life. Whatever your choice is, what you are leaving with today is a great tool that has equipped you with the fundamentals of business, good business. And armed with this knowledge, know that you can tackle anything in life. You will follow, as you should, your dreams, your ideas, and seek ways to develop them. But always appreciate the fact that life educates you in different ways, both formal and informal, and that ultimately your expanding knowledge is the enabler, and the reward that comes with it is your continued capacity for growth. So, just think for a moment that as you go out in the workplace, with fingers crossed, pulses racing, and with your hearts and heads full of determination, you will need to be sure to see and feel the changes taking place around you to survive and to succeed. I draw parallels from the state of affairs we are now and lessons learned, specifically that in everything you do in life, you need to become skilled at the fundamentals of the game. how to balance them, and more importantly, how to stick with them. My father instilled this in me from a very young age. He would always say, if you want to grow, then education of the mind is the means. And that's exactly what I did. There are many people that I have looked at awe and admiration, but none like my father. He reminded me continuously that education is one of the most important basics of life. It is the essence of everything in life. From family, friends, to business, and indeed society. You grow with that knowledge, and those around you grow too. Finally, it is my honor and pleasure to congratulate you all on your MBA, and I sincerely wish you every success that you deserve. And as Yo-Yo said, to make a special moment in time, the whole process is never about proving something, but is about sharing something. Thank you.